trading at its best.
Welcome and thank you for being with us once again. We appreciate everybody taking the time to come in and you know even we have quite a few people that join us that are members of our beta team and longtime members with TradeWest Forex, and so it's kind of fun to have their interaction as well. Despite the fact that some of them have been trading for years and years, Forex 101. It's what we try to do in this series of webinars is cover just some of the basics, some things that that may be either overlooked or things that a lot of times, you know, sometimes it's good to hear what any given company's, their standpoint or their perspective on different things are, and so we like to share with you ours. So, okay, well, let's go ahead and get started. My name is Nate Muno. Mike Swanson and I typically we hold different webinars throughout the week, and we've had several questions as far as what webinars we hold when. Monday mornings we hold a support webinar for all of the software that we develop and the systems that we do, and then of course we have other webinars throughout the week. For example, the beta webinar where all of our beta testers get together and get to test the products that we developed. Generally speaking, beta testers, we get a lot of questions about what it takes to join the beta team, and typically what we're looking for is someone to make an investment in us, and then we spend quite a bit of time and energy effort into investing back into them as testers and traders. So we see, I'll be honest, we see probably some of our fastest growth amongst traders in our beta team. So it's great to have them. And today we are actually going to be going over brokerages. So we're going to talk a little bit about brokers, and today's webinar probably won't take up too much time. We'll see how it goes depending upon how many questions we have. But what we're going to talk about, of course, is making sure that the broker that you're choosing and that you're trading with is the right fit. And you know, it's kind of funny because it's a really difficult question to answer for especially a new trader, because oftentimes you don't even have your own sense of who you are as a trader yet. You don't really have your personality or your characteristics of how you're going to do things until you've spent some time in the markets, until you've won and lost some money. I mean, it's one of those where you kind of have to get in the trenches and see exactly what kind of trader you're going to be. But if you've got a little bit of a sense as to what your risk appetite and things like that is and are, then you should be good to go. You should have enough information to move forward and choose brokerages. But there's a lot of little tricks to it, and we're going to talk about several of them today. We probably won't cover everything about brokers, but we'll get a good start into it. So, okay, the first thing that I'd like to bring up is the cost of acquisition. And when you look at it, there's and this isn't homework, but when you look at this, there's a lot of different ways that different opinions that people have, that traders have about what brokers are doing and what a broker should do or how they should act. And so, real quickly, just to go into this, there's no shortage of brokers. There's so many of them, and they're popping up more and more every day. So there's a lot of them. You can expect new brokers, several every year, and you can expect some of them actually going out of business, that for one reason or another are either shut down or can't afford to do business at the rate and in the manner that they were. So as you kind of look at that, you have to consider yourself as kind of the prize, and not many people do that. Some people look at it as they're applying for a job, and it's it's really kind of the other way around. The brokers should be looking at you as someone that they are trying to earn their business, and sometimes you see that in different things that they offer. You can see some offers as far as rebates or different things that they're doing, trying to get you to make a certain size deposit. Be aware of that. Be conscious. Be conscious. If they're doing that, there's a good chance that they're doing it because they really need to really build their portfolio. And so it's just something to consider as you get going through it. Phil is saying no screen. Do you still have no screen, Phil? Bear with us 1 second here. We might be having a little technical issue here. We'll see. Still no screen. Okay, thanks, Phil, for giving us the heads up. Bear with us 1 second here. We'll make sure that this is coming across for us. Let's see. How about that? Is it coming across now? That's pretty strange. We usually, with GoToWebinar, it's kind of interesting because you can actually pause the screen, but there was no pause on it. So I was kind of cruising through the screens there, and for some reason or another, GoToWebinar did not update the image there. Okay, so still no screen. Do you see an image with the board and then just an outline? Let's try this. Can you guys see that okay? I want to see if it's just Phil that has an issue there or if there's anybody else. Image is okay, so Phil says it's okay. Anybody else have a problem with the visual with the screen? Let's just check this real quick. Thanks for your patience, guys. Bear with us just a minute here. Okay. Well, we'll see. It looks like, okay, beauty is skin deep. Ugliness goes clear to the bone. Man, am I glad there's a couple of my guys that are not in here because it'd be nothing but bald jokes. My hair's on its way out like it's going out of style. Only see your picture. Okay. Now that's fine. I just want to make sure that everybody can hear us okay. Okay, let's go back into this. I'm Nate Muno. Hopefully everybody can see by now. You can kind of see what's going on here. Of course, once again, today's webinar is the Forex 101 webinar. It's Friday, choosing a Forex broker. Okay, hopefully everybody can see us, and it looks like we're good. It looks like everybody can see us. Okay, so we started getting into the cost of acquisition. What we're talking about is kind of the just the perception of what a lot of new traders, when they go into it, a lot of new traders have the idea or this thought that that they're trying to apply for a bank account. Brokers aren't banks. There's a big difference there, and that's not that's not to say that some of them might as well be and kind of are, but there's a difference. I mean, there's a significant difference. And it's important to understand that. So let's kind of go through this. There's no shortage of brokers. I don't know how many brokers there are, but I'd venture to say that from 1 month to the next, there's at least one new broker being introduced practically on a monthly basis, and sometimes less than that. But there's a lot of them. So you have to consider that as a new client, you really are the prize. You're not out there and trying to find one that will accept you, unless maybe you're from the U.S. and you're trying to get a brokerage account set up with and fund an account in a place that is extremely regulated. We have the tendency to scare a lot of brokers away in the U.S. So it's of course when you're looking at the NFA and the CFTC and the regulations and things like that. It gets kind of crazy. It's one of those. Sometimes it's hard to set up accounts. We'll talk about that a little bit. But really what it comes down to, you guys, is that you guys we are the prize. The actual traders are the prize, and you have to look at it that way. And really when you look at it, there's so many different social outlets. More and more it's becoming more commonplace to find places where people talk. And it's interesting to me, just in the past few years that I've been trading, I look at kind of where it's been and where it's going, and in my opinion, brokers are getting away with less and less. It's not to say, and I shouldn't say that there aren't brokers out there that are still kind of crooked and doing things. There's always going to be that. But as far as the ones that really want to grow and want to see their company expand and become extremely profitable and larger, if they're not trying to go out with a bang and just do whatever they feel like they can get away with, chances are they're crossing their T's and dotting their I's. They're doing the stuff that they need to be doing. They spend a lot of money on advertising, and in my opinion, their best investment is in their clientele. I put this picture on here. Can your broker do this? It reminds me of little kids on, when they come home from school or whatever, they talk about awesome things that they can do, and it seems childish, seems ridiculous, but you don't see brokers bending over backwards really at all. I mean, they're going to do what they can, and that's the tough part, is sometimes they'll do just the minimum of what they feel is necessary to acquire new clients, and then they kind of stop there. They're in the business to make money just like we are, so keep that in mind. But a lot of them, in my opinion, haven't quite figured out that service is key. Customer service is huge. But there are some of them, and we'll talk about them at the end of the webinar here. There are some of them that do an incredible job and are getting better and better and better, and that's promising. That gives you kind of some confidence that things could be improving as opposed to getting worse. Number 5 there, word of mouth is far more cost effective than banner ads and regular advertising. So I think they're starting to figure this out. It's one of those that, you can only be in business for so long, doing business a certain way, expecting, different results with the same approach, and it's one of those things that it goes back to the old-fashioned golden rule, Things to consider: do some research, take another trader's word for it. If someone is recommending something, whether it be a company or a trader, if someone says, hey, this broker is great, every brokerage is going to offer a demo account. If they don't, I haven't heard of that, but if they don't, that's kind of a red flag in and of itself. Take somebody else's word for it. However, and I had to throw Ronald Reagan in there. Trust but verify. He was an interesting president for us in the U.S. and it just comes to one of those. You move forward, you open an account, you believe it, you say, okay, this sounds great. Maybe it's one of your buddies that's had a good experience with them. Just check it out. Don't go live until you've got enough people, enough proof, enough research and homework to kind of prove that. When in doubt, start with a demo. We always recommend watching a demo account, setting it up for. There's different approaches to that. I know several pro traders that say trade a larger demo account on demo than what even you can afford to do. It kind of helps desensitize your connection with money. There's a lot of pros that say that. Maybe not a lot, but I've heard enough of them that say that. And then I'm kind of in between. I like opening up a demo account for the amount of money that I'm going to deposit or the amount of money that I want to deposit over the next year or two. So it gives you a better sense as to kind of what you can expect and what you're looking at. Ask around or search to see how many standing complaints have been reported about brokers. So there's plenty of forums out there. There's very few communities out there, but there's plenty of forums where people talk about and you can get some information going into it, and that's a huge help. If you do some of that research, it's time well spent. A question that you have to ask yourself: is the broker registered with any regulatory bodies or authorities? Who regulates them? Is it the federal government of the country that they're located in? Is it, you know what I mean? It's generally speaking, it's going to be local to wherever they're at, and that's the first thing that you kind of have to consider. I didn't think this was an issue when I very first started trading. I thought all brokers had to be regulated. I thought all of them had to have certain levels of checks and balances that kind of kept things in the sway, but that's not the case. So it's just something to consider, and I'm of the opinion that if you have enough people saying that a brokerage is good, I'm not necessarily so concerned about it even being regulated so much as how are they doing business. Now, when you start getting into some larger amounts of deposits and funding of accounts and things like that, it's a good practice to it probably makes sense to make sure that there is some regulation there. And to find that out, just get in touch with the broker. They'll tell you, or you can research it. A lot of times there's different sites that will show. But my opinion is, if you really want to find out what it is, rather than taking potentially outdated information, go and contact them. So many of them have an online chat, or they have some way of sending a quick email to them. It's just not hard. A lot of them you can contact by phone. So some things to consider. More research. So where does the broker make their money? As we know, they're in business to make a profit. They're definitely not non-profit organizations, just with another purpose in mind. They're out there and they're going to make money. They're going to make money on you. The question is kind of how. How are they making money on you? What are they doing to make money on you? The first thing that I always consider, I have a tendency to be impatient a little bit. It's one of those things that there's some aspects and elements of the trader mindset that I don't have down like I'd like to. And I think someone that says that they've got it all perfect is either a robot or they're kind of lying to you. But what are their spreads like? How much is it going to cost you to execute a trade? Getting in and out of trades, what's it going to cost you? What's it going to cost you to roll over the weekend if you're holding the trade? What kind of swaps are you looking at? So there's a lot of different aspects of the day-to-day costs that you should be conscious of. You should have those kind of answers, or those kind of questions answered before you make large deposits, because getting money in and out of a broker, not that it's necessarily difficult, but pushing it around, if you've ever done it from many accounts, it gets old really fast. It does get kind of tiring. It seems like it's more work than it should be with as connected as we are as a global society. Next question, or next part of it here is are their spreads fixed or are they variable? And I'd like to see some. I'd like to see some of the comments and some opinions of what you guys have. So please, if you would, we're definitely open to discussion. So if you've got, we've got Hal asking about my last name, Munel. So the M-U-N-A-U-T, it's French-Belgian, so sometimes I have to help people with the spelling or the how you say it, but it's said Munel. But good question, Hal. Okay, it looks like everybody else has already been answered there. Okay, so how are you guys going to be trading? How are you going to be trading them? Back kind of the spreads. I don't know. Let me ask really quick and just see kind of where you guys are at. How many of you are trading? How many of you are trading accounts with fixed spreads? Phil is asking if I'm Belgian. My family is French, Belgian, and German, I believe. It's sad to say that. My mother's written books and things like that, so she's a family historian. Spreads? What is that? Very, very funny, Kenny. Very funny. So how many? And I'm not getting a very good sign of who's what. But how many of you guys are trading accounts with fixed spreads? And I'm not seeing. I think just about everybody's trading accounts with variable spreads. So the question kind of becomes one of, I do both. Okay. So we've got some people that say they have accounts with both. I was going to say I'd be kind of surprised if we didn't have more. Okay, so there are a few people that have some fixed spreads accounts. The question becomes one of if they're variable, what kind of a swing are you seeing? What kind of a difference between one time of the day to the next? I remember opening an account, and it was really only a couple years ago. Not even 2 years ago, and I was so mad that I'd opened an account that had such a huge swing in the spread that right when I went to I was interested in going in and executing a trade. When I saw what the spread had changed to, I got upset, and I look back on that now and I think I was really upset about it, but really, was it the broker's fault? It really was their fault, and I mean, no, it wasn't. I've got some funny comments coming through here that are throwing me off. Okay, and then Kenny's also saying Hot Forex has just gotten fixed spread accounts. So, and you know what? You see a lot of these changes from one month to the next. These guys are reinventing themselves. Phil is asking about dealing desk versus non-dealing desk, and Phil, you know what? We're actually you're getting ahead of me here. We're actually going to talk about it, but we're going to go into detail about it probably in the second half of this this series or this part. So this will probably be part one. We've got another one. You'll see here as we get going throughout the presentation. So that's the question. How much are they going to vary? It's not the broker's fault. I shouldn't have been upset one bit that I got in there and I was ready to make a trade and the spread was outrageous. That's my fault for not doing the homework. You can't really blame a broker for that kind of information because they, you know, unless you've got some real crooked thing going on where it's a bait and switch, they show you one thing and then it's totally different when you actually go in to execute a trade, which I haven't heard of anybody brave enough lately on the broker side that's doing that. If you have a comment there, please shoot it over to me. Let me know if you've seen somebody that does that. I don't mind kind of exposing that a little bit and putting it up for research. But so usually you don't see that. You should be able to tell how much of a spread you're going to see, and that's one of the reasons why we open demo accounts, because you're going to be able to see it firsthand. No, demos are not the exact same thing, and they don't have the exact same characteristics as a live account, but a good broker will have a very close to real and live characteristics and functionality as far as how they work. The other thing you have to figure out or question is, you know, if you're a United States citizen, what are you going to be able to open an account for? What are they going to offer? You might be able to open an account there, but they might only offer you 50-to-1 leverage. Of course, due to the Dodd-Frank, we're only limited to a certain amount of, you know, of leverage, and that's something else we'll go into a little bit. Kenny goes, there are many brokers that do that, and like I say, I maybe it's because I kind of avoid some of the shadier ones. There's different brokers out there that offer that make some pretty crazy promises. So it's just something to consider. And the research continues. So some brokers may give the same appearance from your perspective, but to a trained eye, they may be drastically different. So you really can't judge a book by its cover. I've seen where two trading partners, to kind of cover more ground, two guys went out and they're trading buddies, you know, different parts of the world type of thing, but they're always trading together and talking. And I saw two guys that had opened different accounts on brokers that looked almost the same. And it was interesting to hear some of the feedback of what one of them said in comparison to the other. One of them was exactly like they'd come across in their advertising, and then the other one was such a drastic difference. He didn't even let the demo go for over a week. It was one of those where, and then when he tried to get answers, he could not get in touch with the broker, and so there's different things like that. That's one of those tests. If you're thorough and you're putting a significant amount of money into a broker, you kind of got to test these guys, and that's another thing that we'll go into. Not all brokers have the same backing, so when they're set up and where they're set up is going to make a big difference. When we're talking about backing, we're talking about everything from their financials to their connections to the markets and the liquidity pools. So you have to consider where do they sit in this mix, and that's part of what we're going to go into in a lot more detail in the part 2 of this webinar next Friday. But and we are recording. We had someone asking a second ago for recording. So we do record the Forex 101 webinar, so you can access them and kind of go to the other ones. Okay, so not all the same backing. Consider the amount of money that you're looking to deposit. If you're making, you know, I live pretty close to Vegas right now, and it's funny because there's a lot of parallels to different elements of trading, and on one side of the spectrum, you've got, you've got flat-out gambling, and people just throwing money into something, whether they have any sense as to what they're doing or not. Sometimes people look at it as, that's a cost for entertainment. I go out there, I spend a certain amount of money, I expect to lose money. If I come home with money, I've got a bigger smile on my face, no big deal. But when you get into trading Forex, there's a little bit different perspective. People look at it more as an investment, but sometimes the mindset doesn't change. so you might as well just be across the table rolling the dice sometimes, and that's something to consider. So when you're making a deposit, consider how much money you're actually putting into and funding that account with. So how do they process withdrawing money? This is a big one that I didn't think would be such an issue across the board, but this is huge. For people that have had different accounts, out of curiosity, who's had a problem taking money out of an account before? All it takes is once for you to get kind of scared and put your guard up a little bit. Kenny says, I've seen it on FXCM, IBFX, to name a few. Dave says that he was with PFG. And did you have a hard time there withdrawing money? And keep in mind, I don't want to give undue criticism to a broker that has kind of some set rules. You have to keep in mind that they have certain things that they have to do. Oh yeah, Dave says PFG best fraud. So he's not a fan. Dave is not a fan of PFG. I don't have a whole lot of experience with them. I've heard good, and I've heard, like you're saying right now, I've heard some bad stuff. That sounds like a flat out, he's never going to trade there. So that's one of those things. All it takes is one experience like that really kind of, I don't know that it skews your perspective. Maybe your perspective's right on the money. Uh-oh, yeah, Dave says the CEO was indicted. Okay. So there's a lot of things that you have to look out for, and you see even good, large, very professional and well put together brokerages getting fined. We saw one not too long ago. I won't go into that, but we saw one not too long ago that saw a huge fine. And I mean, that's one of those things. If they're not regulated, how do you know? How do you know that stuff's happening? So once again, in my book, a lot of the brokers that I like have little regulation, to be honest with you. But I'm watching how much money is going into them, and I'm being conservative as to my approach. It's kind of like going into Forex. I never deposit more money in a broker that I haven't done all my homework on, unless I'm willing to say, okay, worst case scenario, if I never got my money back, am I going to be able to move forward? So that's something to consider. What about Alpara US or UK, IB, FXCM, eToro, Oanda? So these are good questions. So and I've had experience with FXCM. I still have an account. I still have a funded account with FXCM. I like them, and at the same time, I get kind of frustrated. But the only reason I'm frustrated with FXCM, I think, is is my leverage. I like having a higher leverage, and I can't do it there. So that's something to consider. Alpara US, I've heard a lot of good things. We were just talking earlier about some getting slapped with some fines and things like that. UK, eToro, Oanda. I really like Oanda too. I think Oanda is a great brokerage as well. FXCM in UK. I don't know a whole lot about FXCM in the UK. I've heard from other traders, and I've seen a lot of traders, come across a lot of traders doing remote assistance and jumping in and helping other traders that have FXCM in the UK, and I haven't seen them have any real issues with them. Kenny says that he's had a friend that could not get his money out of FXCM. So, it's hard to say. I've never heard of any people having any significant issues pulling money out of FXCM. Dave is saying AxiTrader USA. I've heard a lot of good things about them. I haven't heard anything bad about them. So it's one of those. We could go into all sorts of. It was 1.5 mil. Oh, geez. So there's a lot of things that we could go into about different brokers, and that's one of those things that that we've talked about opening the doors on potentially a little bit more, is having some more conversations. I know one of the things that we've done in the support webinars is we've talked a little bit more about, we've jumped into some of these conversations about platforms and brokerages, and so it's kind of fun. The beta team is also an excellent place. If you guys have not joined the beta team, to my knowledge, we're still open at this point in time. Keep in mind this is a recorded webinar, so we might have closed the doors on the beta team. But it's an awesome place to get involved and get trading in a small group. So, what level of support do they offer? Forex is around the clock. Your broker should be as well. I can't tell you how big of a pet peeve this is for me. All it takes is one time where you're nervous or have an issue with, you know, whether it's a first in, first out, or some kind of a crazy thing that you're just like you weren't expecting, you weren't thinking about, slipped your mind, whatever it might be, you had some kind of an issue, and then, you know, and then you go to make a phone call or you go to try and connect with them, and they're not there. That's a tough one for me. A good brokerage, you know, is going to be open when the markets are open. And I would go as far as to say a good development company is going to try and do something similar to that. Now, at least during when they're launching a product, you can't expect them to keep their doors open all the time. But a lot of times you'll see people. We try to keep support going around the clock. Sometimes we have to. We don't have much of a choice. But it's one of those where a brokerage should be open 24 hours a day, so long as the markets are open. So keep that in mind. They should be able to help out at just about any time. You never know what kind of issues you're going to run into, but if you've got no one on the other side to help you take care of that, you are kind of out in the cold. Okay, leverage. Moving on to leverage. This is something that I'm a big fan. As you guys know, I'm a fan of Investopedia, so I'm gonna recommend them. If all else fails and you're looking for something, check Investopedia on the internet. They're a good place to find out different angles and whether it be a term or something you've never heard of before, or some solid just articles or things that are regarding something you're looking up. Investopedia is a good place to do, a good source. One of the questions I want to jump into first real quick, because I've had this several times. Does anybody know or seen any kind of a leverage that goes above 3,000 to 1? I know Kenny in here actually has an account. I want to say it's FX Glory or something like that. 3,001 leverage. Can you even imagine? So you've got two. Let's talk really quick about both sides of the spectrum. On one side of it, I've seen people that have 2,000 to 1 accounts with, say, XNES, or 3,000 to 1 with like FX Glory. And then I've seen people on the other side of it that have opened accounts. They've been trading our software and our tools, and they're trying to figure out why they're only making, a few bucks here and there, only to find that their account was set up with 1-to-1 leverage. And I shouldn't laugh because I think he's still with us, and I'm not trying to pick on him. No names, of course, but it's one of those. I felt bad because he had his account like that for a couple weeks, a few weeks at least. I think it was upwards near a month. And when we looked into it, we made a couple assumptions, talked with them, and we looked into it, realized, whoa, there was, the account was never set up with the proper leverage. He was actually going to be trading with 300 to 1 leverage, which is pretty good. So anyway, it's kind of a funny little situation, but there's a big variance there, a big difference. Okay, so now I know we've, in previous webinars, Forex 101 webinars, we've already defined some of this stuff. What is leverage? Well, leverage, now this isn't exactly the same definition that we've given before, but leverage involves borrowing a certain amount of money needed to invest in something. In the case of Forex, that money is usually borrowed from a broker, okay? So another thing to consider when you're talking about kind of borrowing that money on margin, okay, you have to think of whether or not the money is actually going out into the liquidity pools. And that's something that we're going to get into the next webinar. We're going to dive into that a little bit more. Some people don't understand that sometimes it's just a hypothetical trade. and the broker is they're fronting it. They're also, there's different ways that they can control what happens to the money that you're trading and what you're doing with that trade. And that can make a big difference. We'll go into that, like I say, in the next webinar. But Forex, of course, does offer a high leverage in the sense that for an initial margin requirement, a trader can build up and control a huge amount of money. One of the things that I hear pretty often is that you see some people that are starting to have a lot of fun with these cent accounts, or nano accounts is I think another way of putting it, but the cent account. So it's kind of funny, but you can actually open cent accounts. I don't really trade them. I've seen them. I've traded them a little bit, but they're not bad for some people, depending upon what you're looking to do. If you want to simulate a large account, if you're going to make let's say a $100,000 deposit in funding any account, it's not a bad idea to take a very small portion of money, and then you're just moving the decimals all you're doing. So that can be kind of fun. Kenny says, I've asked Mike to add account leverage in the EAs. So we have, and Kenny, of course, is one of our first string beta testers. So he's, that's one of the benefits to being on the beta team, guys, is that you get in there and you have the ability to jump in. He's saying everything over 100 to 1 will not be added to the liquidity pool. So you have to look at how these brokers do that. If depending upon the leverage and what you're putting into it, they don't want to overextend themselves. They don't want to assume that you know what you're doing. So they're kind of sneaky about that. And they really, it's their right to do that. You just have to consider how it's going to affect you and your trading and how they're filling your orders and how they're actually how you're actually building up the equity in your account and what kind of different variables are affecting it, because every little variable adds up over time. It's something that I see a lot of people kind of turn a blind eye to, but then they wonder why their account equity curve is not where they expected it to be. So the way that I kind of look at it is leverage is kind of like that little stone or that little thing at the bottom there, and you see underneath that lever there. It's kind of like a teeter-totter effect. If you've got a really high leverage, your ability to really lose or win a lot of money, it's in your hands. There's a lot of control that you've got there. Keep in mind, you shouldn't be trading money that you can't afford to lose. I mean, that's the ongoing disclaimer, right? You don't jump into something. If you can't sleep at night with a certain amount of money, you need to tone it down so you're comfortable, so you stay in the game. A lot of people lose a chunk of money right off the bat, and they're out of it. Their spouse won't let them touch it with a 10-foot pole, and there goes your opportunity. You have to keep the peace. Okay, moving on with leverage. I had to put your best friend and your worst enemy. For example, if you're required to deposit a 1% of the total transaction value as margin, and you intend to trade one standard lot of, for an example, they give the dollar franc, USD franc, and then which is equivalent to $100,000, the margin required would be, in US dollars, for example, $1,000. Thus, your margin-based leverage will be 100 to 1. Pretty simple, guys. This isn't elevated statistics or calculus or anything here. Hal says, I argue with Ken about this. He claims that nobody is loaning you anything. Loans simply risk. And they have no risk since they will stop you out. Yeah, that is their imply. I'm trying to read this small text here, Hal. I apologize. Okay, yeah. Loans imply risk is what he's saying. I should probably put my glasses on. So consider that when you're looking at leverage, when you're looking at how much you're leveraging or how much your account has in the way of leverage. So if you take that in half, you cut that in half, and you've got a $1,000 account, what is your maximum amount that you're going to see in there? It's not going to be 100,000 on 1,000, right? If it's 100 to 1, it's going to be significantly less, and that's one of the things that when you're in the U.S., you have to kind of consider that. we've got some percentages down here below as a ratio, and I think it's going to make a lot more sense. So for a margin requirement of just 0.25%, the margin-based leverage will be 400 to 1. Does that make sense? Now look at the numbers. You go 400 to 1, 200 to 1. You know, I mean, hopefully this comes together a little bit better. Margin-based leverage expressed as ratio margin required of total transaction value. So 50 to 1, you're looking at 2%. 100 to 1, and this throws a lot of people off. I remember Mike Swanson doing a training. Maybe Mike will let me post that training sometime. But I remember we recorded a training with all of the employees, and we were going through this, and it's one of those where he kind of let people fill in the blanks, and and it was pretty funny to see some of the responses. And it's normal because it's hard to make sense of some of this stuff, and you kind of have to see it. So take a look at this. Just consider what's happening. The higher up that number goes, your percentage is dropping. Okay. However, margin-based leverage does not necessarily affect one's risk. And now the key word is necessarily. Whether a trader is required to put up 1 or 2% of the transaction value as margin may not influence his or her profits or losses. This is because the investor can always attribute more than required margin for any position. We're getting some more comments here. Bear with me 1 second, though. What you need to look at is the real leverage, not margin-based leverage. Two different things here, guys. Hal says, think about it. Just how rich are these brokers, especially small ones? They're going to loan 500 to 1 on thousands of lots to thousands of people. Doesn't make sense. They do not have that much money. So I'm wondering, yeah, and maybe Ken, yeah, Ken's got a different perspective maybe there with that, but I know exactly what you're saying. These guys, when they open up their brokerages, some of them, you'd be surprised, some of them don't even need $1 million to start up that brokerage. Depending upon where they're at, there's some pretty crazy things. So when they go in and they start opening it up and allowing people to do, you know, to trade on margin and have these insane leverage, you know, these ratios, it's kind of a scary thought when you think about it. He goes on to say, there's something else going on, but I don't know what it is. But I would like to. Anybody know? Kenny's saying at 250,000, can you open a? Oh, yeah. So some brokers, I think Kenny's what he's saying is he's seen some brokers. You can actually open a brokerage with $250,000. Now that's going to change and vary depending upon where you're at and what you're doing. But once again, keep in mind the location of where your broker is located. So that's one of those things. It's something you can overlook pretty easily. I know that I opened an account and at one place, and then I started looking at, you know, there was a ton of different brokers that were opening up in this specific country, and I thought, well, there's a bunch of them over there, and then I kind of realized why there was so many of them opening up there is because they just were not very regulated. So they were having a heyday. They were growing like leaps and bounds, several of them. To calculate the real leverage you are currently using, simply divide the total face value of your open positions by your trading capital. So real leverage equals, you look at the total value of transaction, the total trading capital in your account. For example, if you have $10,000 in your account, which I think that's a good size account if you're trying to make a significant amount of money. A lot of people that are retiring, that have made good money in their lives, if they're, in my opinion, if you made over 6 figures on a yearly basis, you probably to be making enough money to really enjoy the Forex market after you get comfortable with it and you're doing well. That's about the size account I think that I like to see people have, because they're making enough money to enjoy what they're doing. And you open a $100,000 position, which is equivalent to 1 standard lot. Now keep in mind, we've talked in the past about standard lots, mini lots, micro lots, now these nano lots. You will be trading with a 10 times leverage on your account, so $100,000 to $10,000. If you trade 2 standard lots, which is worth $200,000 in face value with $10,000 in your account, then your leverage on this account is 20 times, so 200,000 compared to 10,000. Investopedia.com. So it's a very clear way to look at it. It's something that a lot of people, I think, going into trading currencies just don't see. They don't have that opportunity, or nobody brings it up for some reason. A lot of people will have an article here or there hidden, but it's not explained clear enough, I think, for enough people. Okay, especially for those who claim to segregate clients' funds. True story, right? So that's a whole nother topic right there. Anyways, you guys, what we're going to do, and I talked a little bit about, I think it was Phil that I maybe had mentioned it too. Our next TradeWest Forex 101 webinar is going to be next week. We're going to be going over choosing a broker. We're going to call it part 2. It'll be kind of the second half of this. We've kind of noticed that when we get into these webinars, it's easy to carry on, and I'm one of those that I could probably keep babbling forever if I didn't have to watch a clock. So I want to make sure that everybody understands that we're going to go a little bit more in depth about this, and I think the second part of this is going to, I think it's going to help out a lot of people. I'd highly recommend coming back and joining us for that. So part 2, we're going to go into everything from, to name a couple here, bucket shops, bookmakers, retail market makers, and more. We've talked a little bit about ECN brokers and the different kind of straight-through processing out there. That's I had to throw this in here. That's kind of funny. You guys know who that is? It was that, or throw in the Meet the Parents image. But Kenny says Warren Buffett is one popular man. Yeah, really, huh? So this is what I wanted to get to at the end of this. I've got people asking me, and without fail, when we start talking about electric chair, no, that's not an electric chair. He's having a lie detector test done there. You can see him kind of sitting the way he is. His hands would be, I think, strapped down to the chair, as opposed to having heart rate monitors and things like that on his fingers and his chest. Let's see here. Dr. Bullock is asking, have you provided a PDF of these courses yet, as this leverage information would be great to have? Have not, but we can. So get with us, Dr. Bullock, if you're interested in catching a PDF. We've done the videos because it's pretty easy to shoot through on these videos and just forward the video or back it up and pause it. But and we have a little bit more chatter and chit chat that we go into, I guess. So okay, so we're going to go into a lot of these things. FinFX. We have formulated our experience with automated systems that we've had. TradeWest Forex, Mike Swanson and the programming team they have put together several different automated systems, and a few of them that are offered to clients. And really, it's not that we're holding back a bunch of products, but when we get to a certain point with an EA, we'll open it up to clients, because we know that a lot of them really enjoy the automated side of trading. We also go over those statistics and success rates, win rates, things like that in the beta webinars, and we're quite transparent about it. So it's kind of nice to go in there. Some people I even invite for a temporary opportunity to go in and see kind of what those beta webinars are like, because you get to see, for example, last week we didn't have the greatest week, but when you look at how much they've won, the EAs have done great. So we went in and flat out we talked about having a rough week, and it was like, shoot, there's a bad week there, but we have weeks on end. We'll have 3 or 4, 5, 6 weeks where sometimes we don't even have any losses. We've done that more than once. It's pretty exciting to be a part of that and see where everything's at and hear what other people are doing with client side automated systems. It makes it nice to know which different brokers are doing well. FinFX has kind of risen to the top of our list It's not the only brokerage that we recommend. Pepperstone has actually been the second brokerage to surface that has kind of been almost arm wrestling with, it's kind of been almost arm wrestling with FinFX. They've done really well. I have someone asking for links. Bear with me one second here. I can post the link for you here in just one second. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and post these to everybody. Here is the FinFX if someone's interested in opening up a demo. And like I say, I recommend, if nothing else, if you don't have a FinFX demo, open one up, try it out, I'm not saying make a deposit right off unless you've been talking with a bunch of people in the beta team and you've been around, but I definitely recommend trying them out. So there's the first one, FinFX, and for everybody looking for Pepperstone. Here's another link. If you look in the group chat, you can see those links. You can also get access to them in the members area. So we have kind of a closed members area, but we do, like I say, we do a lot of webinars and we do a lot of interactive opportunities for people that aren't members to get a better idea as to what we do as a team and a company, and then a group as far as all of our traders. We have quite a few traders that follow, so it's a lot of fun, and we have, in my opinion, we've got the funnest group out there. We have a really great group. FinFX requires a passport as ID. I've heard they do and I've heard they don't. I don't know how, if that's because you're stateside. I've also been told that they don't from someone else that has opened an account since you opened yours. So I don't know. Yeah, he says that they do from U.S. So that's something to consider as you're applying. Now keep in mind, one of the reasons why we really like FinFX, Pepperstone, I will say this right off, Pepperstone does not accept U.S. clients. FinFX does. And it's not just one of those. Currently, FinFX actually offers 200 to 1 leverage. This is where everyone says, oh, what? How is that possible? And I'm sure some of you that have been trading for a good while have noticed that. FinFX offers 200 to 1 leverage. If you've been trading for a good while and you're trading less than a $1,000 account, you can even get 300 to 1 leverage. And for a company, for a broker that has tight spreads, which means they're not charging you very much money every time you get in and out of those trades, then shoot, I mean it's a great opportunity. It's a good place to make money, and once again, keep in mind that it's not a it's not a U.S. broker. They're in Finland. That's where the Fin comes from. So, but they do offer an ECN, and then on a micro account, you don't have the ECN, but you still have good spreads even on the micro accounts. So micros, you can go up to 300 to 1. I know someone who begged them for 300 to 1 out of the gate and got it. There you go. So just tell a good story by email, he says. So FinFX, like I say, if you go to our website, you can see we've got the links there. What we do is when you sign up through us, we try and give you as good of an idea or help you as much as we can. Make sure that everything comes together. Obviously, there's reasons for doing that, but it's in our best interest to see our traders make better money. When we have more people bragging about how much money they're making, hey, it makes us look better. So it's one of those, we want to see you guys make the most amount of money that you can, especially using our software. So it's one of those. Pepperstone, once again, they do accept clients outside of the U.S., but nobody's stateside. So keep that in mind. Okay, everyone, thanks so much for joining us. Please keep in mind that we're going to go into a lot more depth of what different kind of brokers are out there, and this on the educational side, in my opinion, this is huge. It's going to make a big difference in your trading career, understanding and knowing what different kind of brokers there are and who you're trading with and why they have certain reactions to things in the market and how they deal with different trades and their execution. I like to end sometimes on a quote There are two primary choices in life: to accept conditions as they exist or accept the responsibility for changing them.